My name is Brian Johnson. I am a sophomore, and the title for my project is Transcendentalism's Legacy, Exploring its Figures, Beliefs, and the Impact on American Society and Literature. My first question: who were the main figures of the Transcendentalist movement, and what were their core beliefs that distinguished them from earlier literary and philosophical traditions? But first, the Transcendentalist movement emerged in the 1830s and 1840s in New England as a response to Unitarianism and the Enlightenment's rationalism. It was deeply rooted in the philosophy of German idealism and Romanticism, emphasizing intuition, spirituality, and the connection between humans and nature. Our first example was Ralph Waldo Emerson, known as the father of Transcendentalism. His essay Nature in 1836 established the movement's foundation. Emerson believed in the divinity of the individual and all of beings. Something to highlight: self-reliance. It highlights the importance of individual intuition and inner strength, promoting the idea that self-trust and personal experience surpasses norms or institutional dogma. Another example is Henry David Thoreau. He was a student of Emerson's. Thoreau exemplified transcendentalist ideals through his experiment in simple living at Walden Pond, documented in Walden in 1854. His essay, Civil Disobedience, in 1849, argues for nonviolent resistance against unjust laws, reflecting his belief in personal conscience over government mandates. Another example, Margaret Fuller, a feminist and intellectual. Fuller's Woman in the 19th Century in 1845 extended transcendentalist principles to argue for gender equality. She was also the editor of The Dial, the movement's literary magazine, which provided a platform for transcendentalist thinkers. And our last example, Bronson Alcott, a pioneering educator. Alcott applied transcendentalist principles to reform education by emphasizing self-expression, creativity, and moral development over rote learning. Their core beliefs were that transcendentalists rejected organized religion and instead embraced personal spirituality. They believed every individual possessed an inner light or divine essence that connected them to the universe and God. They also critiqued the growing materialism of American society, advocating for simplicity and the pursuit of higher ideals. Nature was seen as a source of truth and inspiration, reflecting the spiritual harmony of the universe. This belief was a response to the industrialization of society and sought to reconnect with humans and the natural world. Their influence on social movements, women's rights, and Fuller's Woman in the 19th Century is often considered one of the major feminist texts in America, drawing on transcendentalist beliefs in individual freedom and equality. Transcendentalist circles included many advocates for women's suffrage, promoting intellectual and social equality for women. Another example, transcendentalists drew inspiration from these social movements, which infused their writings with a sense of urgency and moral purpose. For example, Thoreau's Slavery in Massachusetts directly criticizes the state's complicity in upholding slavery. Fuller's essays and dialogues in The Dial highlight the need for reform and progressive thinking. My third question was, how do themes of individualism and nature in transcendentalist literature challenge the conventions of the time, and what lasting effects did this have on the subsequent American literally movements? Transcendentalist literature profoundly challenged the dominant culture and literally norms of the mid-19th century. Individualism at the time when conformity to societal expectation was the norm, transcendentalist works celebrated personal autonomy. In Self-Reliance, Emerson advocates for trusting one's intuition and rejecting societal pressures, and an idea that was revolutionary in a hierarchical tradition-bound society. Thoreau's life at Walden Pond was a direct experiment in self-sufficiency and non-conformity. And a last example of my third question was the lasting effects on American literature. Transcendentalism paved the way for subsequent literary movements, including realism, which the introspective focus on individual experience influenced realist writers like Walt Whitman, whose Leaves of Grass celebrates the self and nature. And thank you for listening to my informative lecture.